Hello and welcome back to another episode of Math with Sohn. Today we are going to be solving via completing the square, so let's get into it. So completing the square is a really quick technique for solving when something is just flat out not factorable. And there's some things that make completing the square a lot easier, and that would be if there's not a term in front, like it's just a 1x squared, and if the middle term is even. Factoring is still quicker if it's factorable, but this problem is not factorable because nothing multiplies to 1 but adds to 6. So if it's not factorable, then as long as this number in front is a whole, like regular 1, and this number is even, completing the square is very easy. And today is doing completing the square the easy way. So one thing about completing the square that is unusual is that it does not and cannot equal 0. Well, I guess it could equal 0, but you can't have that last number. The 1 has got to go. So we add the 1 over, and we get 1 on the other side. And then from here, you have to take half of this number, half of 6. Half of 6 is 3, last time I checked, and you put it in parentheses squared. And on the other side, you add that same 3 squared to the other side. So here we got a 3 squared, there we got a 3 squared, everybody got a 3 squared. And we do a little bit of math. 1 plus 3 squared is 1 plus 10, 1 plus 9, which is 10. And then we have x plus 3 in parentheses squared. In order to get rid of this squared, you would square root, and we end up with the x plus 3 breaking free of that squared equals plus or minus the square root of 10, because anytime you add a square root while solving, you include a plus or minus. And then the last thing you need to do is subtract 3. And our answer is going to be negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 10. That's it. The only other thing you need to be aware of is sometimes that 10 can be simplified, and in this case it cannot, because 10 is just 2 times 5. That won't simplify. So this is the final answer. Completing the square is a very quick and easy thing that can keep you from having to use a harder technique called the quadratic formula. All right, so we're going to do a few more of the easy ones. So let's say we got x squared minus 4x minus 5 is equal to, let's go with, I want to come up with a number. Let's go with 3. That took way too long. All right, first thing you got to do is make sure that you can't factor this. If we move the 3 over, we end up with negative 8. And nothing really, I think, multiplies to negative 8 that would add up to negative 4. 4 times 2 doesn't add up to 4. So we're going to add 5 over, making this 8 is equal to x squared minus 4x. And then we are going to take half of the 4, put it in parentheses. Half of 4 is 2. Half of 4 is 2, so we put the 2 squared in parentheses, and on the other side we have to add that same 2 squared. And then we end up with x minus 2 in parentheses squared is equal to 8 plus 2 squared. 8 plus 2 squared is 8 plus 4 is 12. Square root both sides. X minus 2 would equal plus or minus the square root of 12, because you added the square root, you include the plus or minus. And then add the 2 over. If we add the 2, we get 2 plus or minus the square root of 12, which may simplify further. That's why it took a little longer, as I wanted to come up with a number that would probably simplify. And 12 does, I think. It's 2 times 6, and then 2 times 3. So the square root of 12, the 2 would break free, and the 3 would remain. You can also think of this as this is the square root of 4 times the square root of 3, and the square root of 4 is 2. So it simplifies. That's just an added problem within a lot of completing the square and quadratic formula questions, is that they just sometimes have to simplify, which is unfortunate, but true. All right, one more. X squared minus 6x equals negative 24. Let's see what happens. Half of 6, I don't have to move anything around, so I'm moving immediately into half of 6. And notice how it's a negative 6, but I kept it a negative 3. That's a thing. But on the other side, and I don't know if I did this on the last problem, it's supposed to be a negative 3. I don't think I did it on the last problem. I didn't. You may have noticed that that was a negative 2 here, but I put a positive 2 here. And the reason why is because what happens if you square negative 3? It's the same as if you were to square positive 3. So it's always kind of being added on this side. So negative 3 squared is the same as positive 3 squared, which is 9, but you keep the sign of this one. No matter what, that stays the same sign. Negative 6 turned to negative 3. We got an x minus 3 in parentheses squared. And then we got an x minus 3 squared equals negative 15. We square root both sides. X minus 3 would equal plus or minus the square root of negative 15. And add the 3 over. And save yourself a little bit of time, because this is the square root of a negative number. If you're in Algebra 1, that would mean like no solution. But if you're in Algebra 2, that indicates that you have an I square root of regular 15, denoting that the imaginary number I is in play. And the square root of 15, I do not believe simplifies, because 15 is just 5 times 3. So this is as far as we can go. And we have our answer. Okay? So that's going to complete this video, but I am going to continue a little bit to say that what I have been doing has been skipping a lot of steps in your benefit. Like, ooh, hit the camera. In your benefit. And that is because it's a lot easier to just do half of 6 and put it in parentheses squared and then add it to the other side. However, what we really were doing, what was really happening, is we were adding 9 to both sides, which is the half of this number squared, and we were adding 9 to this side. And if you were to factor x squared minus 6x plus 9, that is x minus 3 and x minus 3, which is this part right here. That's a lot of work to show a simple thing. So what really is happening is we were adding 9, making a perfectly factorable problem and adding it to both sides and factoring it. And we did that all in one step by saying half of 6, 3 in parentheses squared. Okay, so I think that's a little bit easier to digest, but I do feel like it's a disservice to not show you what really was happening, because if you are like thinking like, how is that possible? Like, we just added 9 over here, we put it in parentheses, that should not be allowed. That's because we skipped a lot of steps in effort of saving time and our brains. But until next time, stay positive, friends, and I will see y'all later. Bye.